أما بعد. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting us the opportunity to come to His house. We ask Allah to accept our ibadah. We ask Allah to forgive our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this day khair for us. And we ask Allah to protect us from all types of evil. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. As we are going through the series of Al-Kaba'ir, major sins, and as we have mentioned and emphasized upon the importance of refraining and protecting ourselves from major sins, because that when a person is involved in a major sin, then eventually all the khair, all the good actions that he is doing, they slowly go away from his life. And eventually a person moves away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today's discussion is about accusation, and specifically when it comes to the matter of accusing a woman who is clean and pure, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran, al-muhsanat. Al-muhsanat are referring to those female who are pure and clean, stay away from sins. But for some reason, people started to give accusation towards them. An entire incident has been mentioned in the Quran, in Surah An-Nur, where some of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites of the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were involved in this act. And it wasn't something that was done on a normal person. It was rather the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam from the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, Aisha radiyallahu anha. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَتَحْسَبُونَهُ هَيِّنًا وَهُوَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمٌ, that you were assuming that this is very lenient. And why were people thinking this act to be lenient? Because this is a sin that is committed by the tongue. And ulama say about the sins that are committed by the tongue, جِرْمُهُ صَغِيرٌ وَجُرْمُهُ كَبِيرٌ, that the flesh is very small, but the sin that is committed with this flesh is very severe and great. And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to Mu'adh ibn Jabal that, O Mu'adh, on the day of judgment, majority of the people that will go into the fire of hell, it will be the misusage of their tongue. As Allah describes, إِذْ تَلَقَّوْنَهُ بِأَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَتَقُولُونَ بِأَفْوَاهِكُمْ مَا لَيْسَ لَكُمْ بِهِ عِلْمٍ وَتَحْسَبُونَهُ هَيِّنًا وَهُوَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمٌ. That when you were involving your mouth and your tongue in saying stuff which you were thinking that it's not a biggie, it's not a big issue that we talk about this. But in the sight of Allah, this is a major sin. This is a great sin and a great slander. So we have to understand, number one is how important each and every single individual is in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we start saying things about people, that he's like this or she's like this or he's involved in this and that person is involved in this. But we don't know that we might see something that is disturbing to us, but in the background, this person might have a greater connection in the sight of Allah and with Allah Azza wa Jal than you and I, which will make us a mujrim, a sinner, a criminal in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once a person becomes a criminal, who is a criminal? Criminal is a person who was involved in an action which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid him to do, and that involves makhluk of Allah Azza wa Jal, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? This is why a person who disobeys Allah is a fajr, and the person who is not fulfilling the rights of people, he's a mujrim. Why? Because in the sight of Allah, he's a sinner, and in the sight of people, he's also a sinner. So that's why we have to be very careful when we are involved in conversation, especially when it comes to accusing someone of an act that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbid. Or this person is involved in this haram, or this person is, like this, or he's like this. All of these types of statement, these are considered to be major sins. Right? We talked about al-qawl al-zur wa shahadat al-zur, al-kidh, lying, accusing someone, and specifically accusing those who are staying clean and they are pure in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when a person gets involved in this, his good deeds are moving away from his life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us all. Because remember, sometimes our emotions, they just come and they overpower us and our tongue just goes everywhere, right? And that's why we have to be very careful how we use our tongue. How we use our statements, because they will be held accountable. Allah will ask us on the day of judgment. We ask Allah to protect us all, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to say those things which are beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Jazakum Allahu khairan. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu.